Welcome to Truth and Life Today with Congregation Adat Ariel, Jewish believers in Jesus and teachers of spiritual warfare. If you'd like to speak with us tonight, call 618-924-1851. And now, here's the lovely and talented producer Deb.
Welcome to the Truth and Life broadcast, where we do our best every week to bring you a biblical perspective of the things we see going on around us and the headlines around the world in the same tradition established for this program by Rabbi Moshe Lori. I am indeed producer Deb, sitting solo at the table tonight, and behind the microphone.
This is Jim. And once again, everyone, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to give us a call at 618-924-1851.
Um, well, let's just run the rounds of the health updates. I'm doing better. Still not 100%. A lot of stuff up in my head still, but actually my strength has returned quite a bit this week. So I'm probably going to have to head out and mow tomorrow, the yard, because things are going to really start to heat up around here. It's going to feel like summertime pretty quick. Our friend Richard, possibly fighting off C. diff again. Now I don't think he's gotten an official diagnosis, but I mean, I think they've called in the antibiotics again because he's having the same sort of problem. So more than likely, it's C. diff. He's not supposed to get that stent out until June 5th. So I don't know if that's still causing him problems or if it's just, I don't know what that stuff does. It just keeps being reoccurring. But so pray for that, for Richard for that. Now his lovely wife Nancy, she's sounding a whole lot better. She mistakenly called me today, but because she was trying to get somebody else's number and get somebody else on the phone, but she was going through dialysis. She's still going through dialysis, but her voice sounds much stronger, and she's really, really making it clear to them that she does not want to be a permanent dialysis patient. So she's really working on trying to wean off of dialysis. How I don't know how you do that, but prayers for her that we're in. And I told her, I said, well, we'll be stand with her in agreement with her in prayer that she will not be a permanent dialysis patient. So, and that's the roundup here at the table. Any roundup news for Jim?
Hoping to find out in the next few weeks. I have uh, advanced diagnostics set up, CTs of the MRIs of the brain and the abdomen and the pelvis, and a CT of the chest, folks. I am praying that I will have zero cancer
Amen.
on June the 8th when my follow-up happens. I'm
Amen.
going in. I asked them to do this, and they said, "Well, we'll try to do it as quickly as possible." They called it, and June 6th and 7th are on a Saturday and a Sunday, so that's pretty unusual to be doing taking imaging and all that. But I'll take it. And then the follow up on Monday the 8th at Siteman Cancer Center in St. Louis. Uh, I'm I'm just feeling too well. I'm healthy. I'm gaining weight, and that's a good thing and a bad thing for me if you know me. And I'm just I'm not feeling the nodules in my lung, and I haven't for about a month now. So I'm we're we're hoping for the best, praying, and it'll be the Lord's doing, because stage 4 kidney cancer and metastatic has no cure. There's no earthly cure. Only the Lord can cure it.
Amen. So there
So
you go. Did we tell everyone how that they can sponsor us if they want to keep our show coming this way? Did we say that?
well, we can do it right now if you'd like. If you'd like to make a donation, you can send it to Truth in Life Today, 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois 62959. That's Congregation Adat Ariel, 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois 62959. And in your envelope, stick a little note in there. Tell us how you'd like your donation to be used.
Yes. So just I think I forgot that or bypassed that or whatever I did. So, and we want to remind everyone. So, these things don't come free. So, if you want to help us out, we would certainly appreciate it. Absolutely. Um, Coming up next week on Wednesday, um, I am assuming that we are going to observe Shavuot on next Wednesday. Because, and I don't know how that's going to be done if Vern is going to be doing a teaching on that day. We had talked about the fact that we were going to do the next Hebrew class, but I called up Larry today and said, "Hey, it says in our bulletin we're going to observe Shavuot." Well, also next week, Shavuot happens on Shabbat, and there are no readings for Shabbat because you're supposed to read the book of Ruth. So I'm going to have to let those fellows figure all of that out. And so once we get more information Friday evening, we'll let you know how that is all going to line up. But
Sneaks up
that's
on them, doesn't it?
it does. So it's coming up next week, Shavuot or Pentecost. So we'll be finishing up the counting of the Omer, and then celebrating. Um, they in Israel celebrate the giving of the Torah. We celebrate, of course, the giving of the Holy Spirit that
Hmm.
happened in the book of Acts, Acts 2. So
Yep.
um, that is going to be interesting. We'll have that coming up. But today is Jerusalem Day. I imagine in Israel it's about ready to end. And that is, of course, the unification of East and West Jerusalem that happened after the Six Day War in 1967. So, um, what I found interesting recently was Netanyahu gave an interview to CBS News. And one of the most interesting things I found him saying during that is he said that he really, and they're going to begin this year, try to not take um, the money that we give Israel. They're going to try to reduce it and reduce it. And he said, I'm hoping that we get to zero eventually, that Israel will not be taking any assistance from the United
They want to
States.
be self sufficient.
Self sufficient. And I thought, that's an interesting development there because, um, of course, Mr. Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he has a way of being very diplomatic. But I think he sees the handwriting on the wall. I think he sees that there's a growing anti Semitism in the United States
Yep.
and that there's growing anti Semitism in the youth. And that he sees that probably they will not be able to count on the United States in the future. And of course, that goes along with the biblical, um, what it says in Scripture. It says that they will be alone and they'll stand alone. And so we've often speculated, well, will the United States be out of power? Will they not be, will we not be on the stage of relevant enough to even be acknowledged? What's going on there? Of course, the United States is not particularly talked about in scripture. We see all of the other nations and their ancient names coming about. Well, we don't really see much about the United States. So it could be that we become isolated as well, and that the majority of the public of the United States becomes very anti-Semitic. It's happening. It's
Hmm.
happening so much now. I have one little thing here. It says this came out of Breitbart. It says here William Paul, the son of Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, reportedly hurled anti-Semitic hate toward Representative Mike Lawler, Republican from New York, at a bar near Capitol Hill on Tuesday night.
Yay.
Reese Gorman, a reporter from Not US or Notice or however, maybe it's Notice. It's Notus. Never heard of it.
Hmm.
Alleged in an article on Wednesday that he personally witnessed William Paul harassing Lawler at a restaurant bar. In a full view of this Notice reporter, the younger Paul, who introduced himself as the Republican senator's son, confronted Lawler about Representative Thomas Massey's GOP primary election in Kentucky next week. William Paul was seated a couple of seats down from Lawler at the restaurant bar and interrupted a conversation between Notice and Lawler to say that if Massey loses, it's going to be because of your people.
Okay.
The argument escalated as Paul wrongly asserted that Lawler, a Catholic of Irish and Italian descent, was Jewish. My people? Lawler asked Paul. Yeah, you Jews, Paul responded. Do you think I'm Jewish? Lawler asked. I'm not. Oh, wow. I'm sorry for calling you a Jew, Paul replied. According to Gorman, Paul further pressed the topic by saying Jews are anti American and that Lawler and his Jewish supporters serve only Israel.
Oh, man.
Lawler repeatedly pushed back and engaged with Paul, defending his support of Israel, and told Paul he was being anti Semitic, noted Gorman. Paul Singer serves Israeli interests, not American interests, Paul said, referring to the GOP megadonor who is helping bankroll an anti Massey super PAC. Singer is Jewish. The arguing took a more aggressive turn when Lawler said, well, you just seem to hate Jews, so there's no point arguing anymore. Don't put words in my mouth, Mike Lawler. I never said that, said Paul as he shoved his finger into Lawler's face. William Paul was charged with assaulting a flight attendant back in 2013, but those charges were dropped. In 2015, he pled guilty to driving under the influence following a car crash. He later issued a statement online that seemed to confirm the report, blaming it on an alleged drinking problem.
Yeah.
Last night I had too much to drink and said some things that don't represent who I really am. I'm sorry, and today I'm seeking help for my drinking problem, he wrote. Well, I think that he is, I mean, I don't know. He's a guy, what, in his 30s, maybe early 40s?
Yep.
This is the mindset that these people have now of that generation.
Yep.
They're anti Semitic. Oh, they don't think they are. They just say, oh, the Jews run everything. That's what they say. Oh, it's the Jews and all their money and influence. That's what we got right there.
Right. And
So,
that's reason I say it doesn't really matter who is what party the next president comes from. We're probably going to turn against Israel, unfortunately. So, and while you were talking about Bibi wanting to become self-sufficient, I said I bet their timeline is before Trump leaves office.
probably. I mean, they really want to scale it down.
Yeah.
They're doing super well. Any reports about what's happening in Israel, as far as they're being very blessed at this time. Um, so they're while the United States is the dollar is kind of tanking a bit, and while we're kind of very even though Trump's working as hard as he can to try to stabilize things, Israel on the other hand is just it's and you can see that by how much it costs to go over there and actually tour Israel, or try to afford anything over there in Israel. It's very expensive.
Tourism's back.
Yeah. Well, I guess it is, but I mean, anytime, anytime that when I went over there, it was very expensive. The dollar does not convert well over there.
Well,
So,
I mean, I was scheduled to go over there. The trip got canceled, but it was $5,000 to go, and that's not including the airfare. The
right.
airfare was going to be about 2,000, so it was going to be about 7,500 for me to go.
And that's, I mean, and that's I spent about 8,000 for Chuck and I to go. He of course bought the. At that time, it wasn't as expensive. The flights were not quite as expensive. Now the airfare was included in the
Okay.
in the amount there that we paid, but it was about $8,000 for two of us.
When gas goes up to $5 a
Yep,
gallon, it's going to cost quite a bit,
it's going to
and
cost
that's
quite a bit.
about what it was back then.
I think on average now for a single person to go over there, it's between 8 and 9 grand. By the time you get everything in. So yes, the dollar is not holding up as well as we would like it to. But other thing I wanted to make a comment about was this week is when we were on the air last week. Actually, I guess last Thursday in the afternoon is when Joni Lamb passed away. I didn't know it by the showtime. I hadn't seen it yet. I saw it as soon as I got home. And today I was trying to think, what are the words I want to describe? I'm I don't know that I can say that I'm stunned, but it's just absolutely hellacious what these podcasters are doing and saying online. I mean, they didn't even wait 24 hours before they started blasting this woman. basically with almost a glee. Oh, she was in a you know she got hers because she really was in a bad she wasn't in a marriage that God sanctioned. I mean, she married a divorced person, a person that divorced his wife so he could marry her. All these incendiary things, all of these, it's like, do you people have no fear of God? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it says in the word that if you gloat even over the demise of your enemy, that God may pull back and not do what he had planned to do because of your attitude.
Well, there's a better
And
question.
these people are berating a woman who spent a long time preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
She was a believer.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been just absolute. I don't know. Like I said, I don't even have a word to describe how horrible they have been.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's times that we can talk about things later on,
Mm-hmm.
but just there's no decorum.
Nope.
And like I said, no fear for what they're doing. It's just let's be as sensational as we can and get all the clicks and all the likes and all of this stuff that we can possibly get off of this woman's misfortune.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were going to say,
I was just going to say, a lot of these kids were raised without fathers. A lot of these people now, they were raised without fathers, and it's usually the father that gives you the filter.
these people, the one woman I saw that was going at this was probably, maybe she's a bit younger than me,
Mm-hmm.
but not a whole lot younger than me. I'm
Right.
not talking about kid podcasters.
Okay.
I'm talking about people who claim to be Christians.
Well, I know.
Oh, they're Christians and they get on there and they have their followings and their people and they teach the word, but then they come on of this and they're going to blast this woman,
Mm-hmm.
claiming all of these things that they know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know Joni Lamb. I don't, I mean, and I doubt that they know either. They weren't in her sphere,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're making all these statements. The only thing I would say, probably to the people at that organization, at the Daystar organization, if you don't know who I'm talking about, Marcus and Joni Lamb started a Christian television network called Daystar, much in the same fashion as Paul and Jan Crouch created and started the TBN channel. Paul, here in this area at TCT, it was Garth and Tina Kuntz.
Right.
So Marcus Lamb died from complications from the COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so Joni took over. Um, there have been all these things going around. Yes, that organization had problems. Okay. I don't claim to know anything about it. I don't know
Right.
any more than anybody else about it.
Right.
But the glee with which these people just go, oh, this shows, yeah, see, I'm right for all of, I was right about this. And, she got hers for all of it. It just was, it's just so, I mean, no wonder most average people don't want anything to do with Christianity or Christian organizations or people
Right. Yeah.
because of the way I can see these people acting. I mean, I don't even, it just was a couple of them popped up. Of course, it went crazy all over YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So they just kept popping up in the feed. And it's like, this is absolutely just, it's like you people can't even wait 24 hours. You can't even let them mourn this woman and bury her.
Right.
This is just, so anyway,
It's. I mean,
the
this
one,
falls into the anti-Semitism you were talking about.
right,
I mean, it's Christians too.
right.
I was listening to something today, and um, I forgot where it was because I was listening to a lot of stuff. I was off the phone today at work, but they were talking about the correlation between Galatians chapter 1 and Revelation chapter 20, where Paul admonished the Galatians to be careful of people who talk about other religions other than that. And if they do, they should be condemned. And then it takes over to chapter 20 of Revelation, where it talks about Christians will not just be killed, they will be beheaded.
Mm.
And what religion in this world is the one that is big on lopping people's heads off? Islam.
Well, I mean that's been going on. They're doing they're murdering Muslims are murdering Christians right now in Africa. I mean
Yeah,
the Iranians are murdering their own, let alone
right,
Christians.
right.
But that was one of the things I was going to say. All these people that are they took such glee in anything that was happening with TBN and Paul and Jan Crouch. They did the same thing there. There's been this undertone of what they keep saying about Christian television. It's like, oh, they want your money and they're all scamming you and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I dare say, how many of these people that, I mean, a lot of it was pastors early on. They didn't want the people in their congregations giving money to Christian television because they wouldn't be getting as much money as at their church. And they really didn't want to split up any money
Mm-hmm.
that was going to Christian television. But I dare say, how many of you people out there who criticize Christian television have gotten up and gone out and preached in a Muslim nation?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that gets the word into places like a Muslim nation or Iran is Christian television, is the airwaves
And it's pirated.
and through the internet. I mean, we've seen what has happened in Iran. They totally shut off the internet and isolated those people.
They did.
But I mean, and I can't remember. I think the man's name was George. Originally, it was Christian radio. I believe the man's name was George Otis. He had originally before Christian television, he had Christian radio,
Right.
and he had a radio station in the Middle East. I can't remember which country it was. I haven't brushed up on my history on that, but he had people there, and those people they that radio station was bombed, and he lost people because they tried to kill those people back then for sending Christian through the airwaves.
Right.
And he rebuilt it. He would not be stopped. And so and then like I said, Joni and Marcus opened up in a place in Israel. Daystar is one of the only Christian television stations allowed in Israel. So for all of you people who want to jump on all of these people and say, well, only they want is your money, how many of you have gone to Israel and tried to preach the gospel? You'll probably get thrown out of the country
Right.
because they really don't tolerate Christian evangelism in Israel.
Christians are second-hand citizens, second-class citizens.
Not in Israel. I mean, they don't treat them bad, but you can't go in and just go out and witness in
Right.
Israel.
Okay.
I mean, the only place I mean that's been a thing that Tucker Carlson, all of them are saying, oh, Christians are second-hand citizens in Israel. Um, no, that's not true. They honor all the faiths. They in Israel they have all they have the Christian quarter. Now the Orthodox would love to drive everybody out of Jerusalem. The Orthodox, they can be a bit of a problem towards Christians, but the Israeli government that's the only place that you're safe to be a Christian in the Middle East is Israel. That's the only place. You just can't go out and, openly witness. They're not going to tolerate that. But you certainly, I mean, if you're in a Muslim nation, they're going to, I don't know, throw you in jail, behead you. I don't know what all they would do in certain nations over there. So again, like I said, all of you people who want to jump all over Christian television, I haven't seen any of you offer any alternative to get the Christian message into these nations that won't even allow it. So, um,
They probably don't want it. It sounds to me like if they're willing to go after Daystar, if they're willing to, I mean, I kind of cringe when I hear of a Christian figure that is disgraced, for lack of a better term, because it's just it just gives God a bad name.
sure, I
And
mean, but we run into that in everyday life. I mean, we've got
right,
we've got people all over Southern Illinois now and in the educational system that are getting hauled into jail for what they've done against children. They're
Right.
teachers in the community.
Right.
So, it happens all the time.
Males and females.
And so it's nothing new. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
bad when things happen to the people who, but it's in every business, right?
Mhm.
So for all of you people who are saying, well, all they want in Christian television is your money, well, it's like, well, that's the only thing that Walmart wants.
Right.
And are they holy and righteous at Walmart
Mhm.
or any other business on the planet?
We just need a revival. That's
So
basically what it amounts to.
well,
We have
I
a
mean,
breakdown. We have a breakdown in morals. We have a breakdown in God.
yes,
Nobody. I mean, God is being thrown out of every place.
right.
So
But I mean, uh, I go back to Pastor E.V. Hill, where two or more are gathered, that's where the trouble is.
right.
And so you're not going to have perfect people. Um, and so have certain things been handled poorly? Yeah.
Hmm.
I think there have been in every community, in every Christian church. I don't think anybody is above any of it. But there's no um it's just a disgrace, I think, how this was handled, and what I see going on. But like I said, it's all about clicks and likes and advancing to get if you get more clicks and more likes, then you get more money on the internet. And
Yeah.
so we can just say that. All you people, all the going after Joni and all these and anybody else, that's all you're after is money,
Well,
clicks, popularity. Is that it?
well, the attitude is if it's good enough for the View, it's good enough for us.
I mean,
And the View is probably the talk show that started all of that as far as trashing people publicly. So
oh well.
I mean in this
I
fashion.
guess. I mean, you can talk about Rona Barrett and the Hollywood Reporters back before all
Well,
this. They were the ones that trying to get the dirt on the Hollywood people. It's a business. I
hmm,
mean, it's news. That,
yeah, but
news sells. Let's get as much trash out there, the tabloids, all of it. It's nothing new. It's just disgraceful in the Christian realm. We're not supposed to be doing that.
right.
I mean, they could have come on there and said, look, we have some problems with what happened in that Daystar organization. But right now, we're going to pray and hold up the family and hold up that organization for this tragedy that has occurred.
Hmm.
Right? Could have been civil. And then later on down the road, we may talk about a few things. But this is,
Whatever happened to praying for people?
yeah.
That's
So,
I guess that's my question.
the
So,
only thing I would say that I advice to the Daystar organization. And it may be early in the process, and they may not exactly know what happened, but to not talk about what caused her death is a little. It's leaving room for people to, you know, put all sorts of theories in place and add to all of this.
hmm,
So they do. I mean, they said, well, she died after she had complications from a spinal fracture that complicated other things. It's like that's kind of a strange. It's like my mother had spinal fractures. She
right,
lived to be 87 years old. Spinal fractures don't cause you to die.
right,
If Joni fell off a building, different thing.
right.
But this is so I would encourage them to be very forthcoming as soon as they can about what happened because people online are surmising that her husband had something to do with this, that maybe he murdered her, these kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So you might want to consider that. I also did see that, of course, the thing that's been happening with that organization is a split in the family.
Yep.
And the son thought that he should become president. I did recently see, and if it's true, if it's a real photograph of Marcus's wishes, I mean the statement. He said in his statement that if something had happened to him, that he wanted Joni to be head of Daystar.
Hmm.
And if something happened to Joni, that it would to pass to his son. So at the time of Marcus's passing, that was his wishes. And that's what the board did. They put Joni in charge. This caused a split and a rift with her son.
Hmm.
That's a shame. But I don't know what part of his father's wishes that he didn't see or didn't know about. Right.
Right.
So, anyway, but uh, everybody is making comments about who should take over now. I hope they get counsel in there. I hope they get true people who care about that organization, care about the family, and can go in there and help in a Christian manner, like you said, prayer, and put prayer over the situation and that everything turns out for the best because there are great shows and the Christian message that does go out from that channel. And so I pray they can keep it going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but like I said, I just had to make a comment about all of that because it's just absolutely, I guess, indicative of the times we live in, but it's certainly what is happening is not Christian. And the way that they're handling all of this. Um One other thing, because I'm going to talk here a little bit about what's going on with our president in China. I was watching some of the pomp and circumstance, and I want to remind everyone that personally, um, when you look at all of that stuff, I have it in the back of my mind that China is really no different than Iran, that China is basically operating under the same spirit as Iran does, except they have business suits on. And they don't hesitate to do away with their own citizens if it's for their good in some respect. So while all of this is, I mean, we have to deal with things in this world. China is a danger and it's an enemy. And we do have to keep that in mind. But it may look civilized, but keep in mind what the spirit is behind all of this. We know that Iran is behind the scenes and helping. China is behind the scenes and helping Iran and all of these things. Um, they, of course, have basically said that they're our enemy, not to our face, but of course they want to be the number one in the world, and they are catching up quickly on things. Like I said, they don't hesitate to do whatever it takes to try to win in races. I heard them talking about the AI race. And while the United States is still in the lead, China is coming up fast. And so these things are going on in all of these negotiations. But we have to pray. Of course, I'm sure everyone has been praying for our president and wisdom in all of this. Um, Of course, President Trump has been playing quite the chess game in all of this and the way he's been doing things so that he would have some standing against China. It's a tricky business with them, but like I said, don't look at them any different than just because the Ayatollahs they dressed with their turbans and their their robes and things that they looked, well, oh yeah, I can see that they're different. Well, China is the same spirit as those people are. Like I said, just in business suits. But this is coming from Fox News. It says Chinese President Xi Jinping issued a stark warning to President Donald Trump that Taiwan could trigger clashes and conflicts between the world's two superpowers, injecting a note of potential confrontation into an otherwise upbeat summit in Beijing. You see, like I said, they still have the same spirit that Iran is operating in.
Hmm.
President Xi stressed to President Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China US relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. However, or otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts, putting the entire relationship in great jeopardy. See, you know, he can smile and be so pleasant, but he's issuing threats. These are threats. Oh, it's so cleverly worded, but it's threats against the United States.
Well, the rumor is you don't want to work for Xi. I mean, a lot of people go into give him reports, and if it's not what he wants to hear, he pulls out a gun and shoots you right in front of his desk.
Could be.
So, yep,
People have disappeared, but he's saying this to our president.
right.
So, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said following the meeting, the White House, however, downplayed the exchange with a senior administration official telling Fox News Digital that both sides reiterated their long stated stance on the issue and everyone understands each other's position. Trump struck a notably warm tone in his public remarks, predicting a fantastic future together and praising Xi as a great leader, as the two leaders' open talks focused heavily on trade, investment, and economic cooperation. And I heard some things this evening about how the United States, in some of their requests, did not have to promise anything, did not have to give up anything or exchange anything. And so evidently, I mean, you know, Trump has worked it to where he's got China over a barrel. They need our oil. They need things from us. So now there are things we need from them, but we're working to try to not need them as much. But until the next year or so, there's things that I guess we still need quite a bit from China, and that is the thing that Trump is trying to change. See, he's trying to put us on more of a strong footing on our own. Just like Israel said they want to have a strong footing on their own. Trump is trying his best to switch things around. I also heard rumors that he wants to make Venezuela the 51st state. um,
Along with
yeah,
Puerto Rico and Canada
and Cuba, and all he's wanting
and
to add
Greenland.
he's wanting to add a whole lot more stars to our flag.
And Greenland.
Uh-huh. So just hours in, and Xi Jinping has already threatened to quote collide or even clash unquote with the United States if we continue our support for Taiwan. Trump apparently didn't say anything in response. He was just mute. Schumer said, for the sake of democracy and the stability of the global economy, Trump must not sell out to Taiwan. So, since when has Schumer really been worried about this?
Well, Schumer's too busy selling out the Israelis.
Right. The exchange underscores how Taiwan, the most sensitive and potentially explosive issue in U.S.-China relations, is reemerging as a central fault line. Well, of course, because Xi doesn't have anything else. Xi has been sidelined in Venezuela. Xi has been sidelined in Iran. Xi has been taken out of leadership strongholds that he has had because of Trump. So the only thing he can bring up is Taiwan, right? That's the only thing he can saber rattle with, right? Trump himself had suggested before the summit that U.S. arms sales to Taiwan could come up during discussions with Xi. He told reporters earlier this week, I'm going to have that discussion with President Xi. That prospect alarmed some national security analysts who warned against allowing Taiwan to become part of the broader U.S. China negotiation over trade or other strategic issues. Taiwan needs to stay off the menu, So, anyway, we could go back and forth over this because after the summit, however, Secretary of State Marco Rubio sought to minimize the Taiwan portion of the talks, saying U.S. arms sales to Taiwan did not feature prominently in the discussions. And so, they're playing a very delicate balance here with things. Of course, speaking of Marco Rubio, he says here the situation with Iran is irreconcilable. Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated on Wednesday that Washington's stance that Iran must not obtain a nuclear weapon, adding that he would welcome a more active role from China in helping resolve the Middle East conflict. Iran is an example of a bilateral issue that is irreconcilable. Their clerical regime wants a nuclear weapon, and the world, led by President Donald Trump, says that can't happen. Rubio, and actually even China today said that can't happen. So Rubio told Fox News aboard Air Force One that while en route to Beijing to join the U.S. delegation and the president for the first diplomatic visit to China in 9 years, speaking of China, Rubio stated that it is in its interest to convince Iran to walk away from what they're doing now and trying to do now in the Persian Gulf. I don't know that even China can really say anything to Iran. Those people are nuts. I
Well,
mean, they are sold out on what they see that they have to do to achieve world dominance and bring back their Mahdi. That's it. I mean, so they're not reasonable
well, my question to the Chinese would be, why are you backing them then?
because they
That
want the
makes you
fuel.
that well, I get it, but that makes you as crazy as the Iranians.
Well, like
It
I
doesn't matter what your
said,
needs are.
I said China is just like Iran, except they're wearing business
No,
suits.
this is true.
Okay.
This is true.
So
Yeah.
they have no more care or concern for their people than Iran does for theirs.
Nope.
They have no more care or concern for what happens, except that they get to be the top.
Yeah,
And that's
COVID
what
proved.
they want to do
Yeah,
is
COVID
to,
proved that.
yeah,
Yeah.
they want to be the top.
Hmm.
And America in the United States is their number one nemesis, is their number one enemy. But they have to look good, but, this is, they've tried to play both sides all along. They want to play, they want to be the conductor and conduct everything around the world. Like I said, when Trump came in and talked about Greenland and he took over Venezuela and he started shutting things down and then he bombed Iran. Yeah, it came to the fore what was going on there. China and Russia. And so this has really put a cog in. Now, elections matter. Will there be someone to come out after Trump to keep this going? No. China, Russia, Iran, they're all trying to just appease Trump for now because they know his time is limited.
Right.
And they don't see anyone like coming down the line that has any kind of strength like Donald Trump does. So this is what we've got. This is and again, like I say, try to bring you a biblical perspective. Um this is the repositioning of the world that God is putting in place for his end time scenario. These are the names: China, Russia. We know the ancient Iran, which is actually Persia. We see it set up in the ancient prophecies. Something had, I mean, with the way things were, but now what do we got? We've got all this conflict going on with around Iran and the repositioning of things. And then we also have this board of peace and the realigning of the Muslim nations. We see that the UAE is not very happy with Iran. Saudi Arabia, not very happy with Iran.
Right.
So we see a reordering and a reorganization that's going on. And I believe this is going to bring things around for the end time setup. Do I see peace in the future? No, not really.
Oh, it's not going to happen.
Do I see a utopian thing coming from the United States and getting in? No.
Mm-mm.
Do I see the fact that can Trump settle all this? No, I don't think he can. I don't think he would have time even if he was president for the next 12 years. I don't think that's in the offing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's the setup for the end time of Ezekiel 38 and 39 and then the setup towards revealing the Antichrist. How it's all exactly going to work out, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I see these little things happening, these little cogs, these little wheels, these little repositioning, you start to see things bubble up to the surface that you can see. So,
Well, Dave Robbins in the last few days has been on the Jim Baker program, and he talked about that. And he talked about World War III and it being the sixth of the seven trumpets that they talk about in Revelation.
I don't agree with Dave Robbins on a lot of stuff. He has a totally different point of view of the end time
He
than
does.
anybody else. I mean,
He does.
that he and so and his father-in-law,
Irvin
Irvin
Baxter.
Baxter, believe that, most of the trumpets and the seals have happened and all this sort of stuff. I don't quite see it that way. I'm not saying that you can't have dual things in scripture.
Mm-hmm.
There can be dual certain things in scripture can indicate several things. But I mean, he totally believes that that when a rapture happens, it's going to be up and down, boom.
Mm-hmm.
That we're going to go through all the tribulation. We're going to see the Antichrist. We're going to see all of this stuff, and then at a certain point, then we come back.
Right.
It's like, uh,
And he touched on that.
and so
Yeah.
that's his thing.
Yep.
And he can believe that way. He may be right, and I believe his heart's in the right place. I mean, he wants to really be
Accurate as he can. Yeah.
an evangelist and witness in the Middle East. He wants to do all that stuff. He's one of the few that actually, they've got a place in Jerusalem and they're teaching it. But I don't quite agree with some of the things because I think that you have to be careful. I really can't go into it much. I'm seeing this as I read through the word. You have to be careful with understanding who's being talked to and what's being talked about. And I personally, after a certain point in the book of Revelation, don't think it's talking to the church. I believe the church is raptured out.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that it's talking to let's do it differently. Let's say that right now, believers, doesn't matter what you are, what nationality, Jew, Gentile, whatever, your believers are now, we're the church. And we will be taken out.
Mm-hmm.
There will be end time believers. Okay? They didn't make it. They didn't make the decision for Christ before the rapture. But after it happened, they say, "Oh, wow. I guess they were right," and they become believers. But they do have to go through the tribulation time. In particular, those people in the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a group of Jewish believers that, yes, oh wow, that Jesus, he was the Messiah. And I think a lot of that stuff is talking about them. And so that's my belief on things, that you've got to know who's being talked to
Right.
in different times throughout that. Now, like I said, that's the way I'm interpreting things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see different people groups different timings throughout this whole thing of being talked to, and so you kind of have to know who's being talked to. um so that's we'll see. I don't know,
Right.
but hey, if we're here when the Antichrist is revealed, then so be it.
Mm-hmm.
That's that the Lord can do whatever he wants, whatever way he wants to do it. But I still see a pre-tribulation rapture. When it's going to happen, I don't know.
Just be ready.
Yeah, it's like be ready for whatever
Just be
way.
ready. Yeah.
So, but yes, and I, like I said, Dave Robinson, he has it down. He's got Urban Baxter's thing down, fat.
Oh yeah. I mean,
But
and he does think that we're going to go through this with everybody else.
mhm,
Um, I hope we don't.
right.
I mean I really don't have an opinion one way or the other on it. I
There
just want
are
to be
enough
ready.
scriptures. There's enough
Yeah.
scriptures that, and
Support both. Yeah.
support both. He has, his mindset that's going to be this way, and he kind of brushes off some of those scriptures
Mm-hmm.
that, it's like I've heard some of his explanations for that. It's like, well, that's not, you're not addressing the scripture exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. So anyway, but like I said, I'm not in a position right now to challenge him. I'm not an eschatological scholar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Hal Lindsey could have taken him on.
Mm-hmm.
So because I don't spend all of my time because I'm not going to get in debate about that. And like I said, I heard as I go back on that evening on TBN, where they had Stuart McBurney and Doug Clark and Hal Lindsey, and they each took a position,
Mhm.
and they each went through all the scriptures for each position. And then that was the night that Hal Lindsey said when he heard Doug Clark give the pre-trib teaching, that he Hal Lindsey said, "I'm pre-trib." He said, I was leaning more mid-trib, but I'm pre-trib now after hearing all the scriptures."
Mhm.
So, but they each did a very good job. It was that program won like a, uh, you know, Dove Awards or whatever television awards for it, but because
Yeah.
it was very well done. But there, and you can go through them, and you can have people stand on each one and make a very convincing argument.
Yeah.
But
And they did
again,
it. They did it again later on with three different guys. Irvin Baxter was actually the one that said it would happen post trib. I
hmm
forgot who the other two guys were,
yeah,
but they had them all take
hmm
positions, and
right,
it was an interesting conversation.
yep,
You know,
yep.
so
So each one has their way to back up things. So, but as Rabbi Byrne says, it may be because we're not reading the original language.
this is true.
So if we don't have a real good translation of the original,
Hmm.
we can kind of be out here, you know,
We could all be flapping in the wind when it's
yes,
all said and done.
wandering
So yeah,
around,
yeah.
so um and anyway, we can, like I said, but yeah, the best advice is be ready for anything.
Hmm.
And our main focus is to preach the gospel, to tell everybody about Yeshua, and to tell everybody about the Jewish roots of your Christian faith,
Hmm.
and to try to focus on the timetable of things and see that darkness is out there and it's coming and it's more and more, and we need to be um encouraging folks. It's like you really don't want to be out there on your own. You really want the Lord to to lead you through all this, because this is going to get very, very difficult. Very difficult. Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated on Wednesday that Washington stands that Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. So it says here that the American top diplomat was referring to, of course, he was saying here, um, speaking of China, he stated that it is in its interest to convince Iran to walk away from what they're doing now and trying to do now in the Persian Gulf. Um, they're saying that they own it, basically, and you're going to have to pay them a toll. Well, they've gone back to being the pirates that they've always been.
Hmm.
All the pirates have been Muslim, right?
Hmm.
The shores of Tripoli, all that business. We've made the argument to the Chinese, and I hope it's compelling and that they'll have a chance to do something about it at the United Nations later this week, he continued. Despite the close relationship between Beijing and Tehran, Rubio said that China's economy is export driven, meaning that their economy is fueled not by what they consume domestically, but by what they make and sell to other countries. See, just like Iran needs to pump its oil, China needs to pump its cheap goods. And economies are melting down because of this crisis in the strait. They're going to be buying less Chinese product, and the Chinese exports are going to drop precipitously,
Hmm.
right? Speaking to Fox News, so basically, while they may have us over a barrel on some things, we have them over a barrel on some things. It's like, look, you want your economy to keep going, you better do something about Iran.
Hmm.
So, speaking to Fox News about the decision to go to war with Iran, Rubio emphasized that the Islamic Republic was ramping up its conventional drone and missile capacity to the extent that it would have been impossible to attack in the future. Obviously, they had that. Nobody could do anything about their nuclear program, because they would say, if you attack our nuclear program, we will wipe out 6 countries in the Gulf region and you won't be able to defend against it. And a year from now, they would have been at that point. And that's something that they're not talking about much, is it? The president said that it's an intolerable risk. People are struggling to make that connection, but that connection is very real. They were building such a high number of drones and missiles that no one could attack Iran, because the result would be catastrophic for the region. And once they had that immunity, then they would break out toward a nuclear weapon. That's what they've been selling all that stuff to Russia too, to fight against Ukraine.
Right.
Well, that's been cut down a little bit, and Russia's kind of talking about possibly coming to a ceasefire with Ukraine.
Right.
So, there are other things that are rippling here of consideration as to why Trump did what he did against Iran. As much as the Democrats want to try to say it's an unjust war, there were other things. I mean, Trump never acts on just one thing for one reason. He just never does. Meanwhile, today, two more ships have been reportedly attacked near the Strait of Hormuz, including an Indian flagged cargo ship that caught fire and sank off the coast of Oman, and a ship that was taken by unauthorized personnel while at anchor. Pirates who sailed it toward Iranian territorial waters. Again, I said pirates, right? Muslim pirates. The Indian ship was identified by maritime security firms as the MSV Haj Ali, a wooden barge about 175 feet long that was carrying livestock from the port of Berbera, Somalia to the United Arab Emirates. The Haj Ali was rocked by a major explosion, possibly caused by a drone or missile attack, which started a fire on board. The ship's 14 crew members were rescued by the Omani Coast Guard, but the ship sank off the coast of Oman on Wednesday, presumably with most or all the livestock still on board. Indian and Omani authorities did not immediately name the attacker, but it was most likely Iran. See, that's what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's their last thing here, which has been using terror attacks to prevent ships from passing through the Strait of Hormuz unless they submit to extortion by the regime in Tehran. The Indian Foreign Ministry condemned the attack as unacceptable and said, "We deplore the fact that commercial shipping and civilian mariners continue to be targeted." So, what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
They come back, well, what's the United States going to do? What are you, foreign countries, going to do?
Right.
You have all allowed this Iranian regime to get out of hand like this.
And half of you won't even let the United States use your ports or your air bases. So
Yeah.
hey.
So the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Center said on Thursday that another ship was boarded and seized while anchored about 44 miles northeast of the port of Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates. The ship's captors were reportedly taking it to an area under Iranian control. The UK MOT did not immediately identify the captured ship, but the BBC cited ship tracking data and suggested it was a Honduras flagged cargo ship called the Hui Chang. The last known position of the ship, which it broadcast on Wednesday, was roughly the same distance northeast of Fujairah as the vessel in the UK MTO's alert. Operators of the Hui Chan told the BBC that it was operating as a floating armory, which stores weapons for security firms who protect ships at sea from attack from pirates. And they were attacked by pirates. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on Thursday denied Iran was attacking ships and claimed Tehran views the Strait of Hormuz as open for all commercial vessels. Yeah, right. The Strait of Hormuz is now suffering first and most from the U.S. aggression and the blockade that they have imposed on it, Araghchi said. Oh, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that at the BRICS foreign ministers meeting in New Delhi, India. Yeah, there you go. They're letting Iran speak at their foreign ministry. So, I have no sorrow for these people who are they're not doing anything about them. You have a BRICS organization. One of your members is out of hand, BRICS, but they're not doing anything about it. As far as we're concerned, the Strait of Hormuz is open for all. But they need to cooperate with our Navy forces, he said. Oh, there's the little caveat,
Yeah.
huh? So
Well,
we
we
have not made any obstacles. It's the Americans who have made blockade, and I hope that it could be ended by the removal of this illegal blockade imposed by Americans, really. You're the ones planting the bombs.
I think we could make the argument that there's more than one country in the BRICS nations that are out of hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Iranian state media contradicted Araghchi's unlikely claims on Thursday by reporting that the Strait of Hormuz is closed to all except select Chinese ships. So essentially, the other problem we have here is that no one in particular is in charge of Iran. there's all these different factions. You've got the
Right.
IRGC. I don't know who Aragchi claims he's speaking for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know who he's because IRGC is one group. Then you have the regular,
You have the mullahs.
what's left of them,
Yeah.
and then you've got like the regular government.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know how many branches of these things that are out there that they're going on. But anyway,
Well,
um,
I think Trump would like to get to the IRGC. I mean, if you can quell the military, you've got a leg to stand on. But
and
let's
interestingly, the IRGC is not the military. They are like a division that has they took over the mullahs. They took over the army. They're basically a terrorist group within
right,
that took over everything.
right.
So,
I kind of compare them to the Syrian leader, and he was formerly Al Qaeda.
mhm,
Same thing.
yeah.
So
So IRGC is like I don't know, just like the Nazis took over the German, but the German military was still the
right,
German military.
right.
Nazis, the IRGC are the Nazis of Iran. So that kind of thing. Netanyahu says he secretly visited the UAE during the Iran war and the UAE denies it. Yeah, that's the big thing today. Um, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday that he made a secretive visit to the United Arab Emirates and met with its leaders, President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, during the U.S. Israeli war with Iran earlier this year. The meeting resulted in a historic breakthrough in relations between Israel and Abu Dhabi, the prime minister's office said in a statement. The UAE, however, denied that Netanyahu visited, calling the statement from his office entirely unfounded. No, they don't want to get in the middle of it, right?
Mm.
The announcement underscored the increased cooperation between the two countries during the war after reports on Wednesday said that the heads of Israel's two main intelligence agencies had also made secret trips to the Gulf state to help it shore up its defensive and offensive capabilities. Um, in face of the Iranian missile and drone attacks, a source familiar with the details said Netanyahu and Ben Zayed met in Al Ain and in an oasis city by the Oman border on March 26th, and that their meeting lasted several hours. The UAE reaffirms that its relations with Israel are public and conducted within the framework of the well known and officially declared Abraham Accords and are not based on non transparent or unofficial arrangements, the Emirati Foreign Ministry later said in response. Accordingly, any claims regarding unannounced visits or undisclosed arrangements are entirely unfounded unless officially announced by the relevant authorities in the UAE. The UAE calls on media outlets to exercise accuracy and professionalism and to restrain or refrain from circulating unverified information or promoting misleading political narratives. Responding to the UAE's denial, Netanyahu's then spokesman insisted his former boss's account was true. As someone who knows the United Arab Emirates well and has lived there for long periods of time, and as someone who accompanied the prime minister on the historic trip that has been top secret until today, I can say that the prime minister was received in Abu Dhabi with the honor of kings, wrote Zvi Agmon on Facebook. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, his family members, and other dignitaries welcomed us and were happy to see the Prime Minister of Israel on their soil, he continued. The Sheikh greatly respected the Prime Minister and personally drove the Prime Minister in his personal car from the plane to the palace. The things that the prime minister concluded during this amazing visit will be talked about for generations to come. A great success. Iran, meanwhile, threatened the UAE and said it knew of Netanyahu's ostensible visit to Abu Dhabi. Netanyahu has now publicly revealed what Iran's security services long ago conveyed to our leadership, wrote Abbas Aragchi on X without explaining why Iran didn't go public weeks ago with the intelligence he claimed it had. Enmity with the great people of Iran is a foolish gamble, continued Aragchi. Collusion with Israel is doing so unforgivable. Those colluding with Israel to sow division will be held to account. See what's happening now? Iran is just turning on all of their Arab brothers and sisters, right?
Mm-hmm.
The trip would be the first that Netanyahu has made to the UAE since normalizing relations with Abu Dhabi in the 2020 Abraham Accords, as previously hoped for visits failed to materialize. His office had initially announced a trip to Abu Dhabi days after he began his sixth term as prime minister in December of 2022, but it was canceled by the UAE amid anger over the national security minister Itamar Ben Gvir's visit to the Flashpoint Temple Mount. At the time, a senior Arab diplomat told the Times of Israel that the decision to put the visit on hold was also partially due to fears that Netanyahu was use the opportunity to publicly threaten Iran while on Emirati soil. So everybody's been terrified of Iran for a long time, haven't they?
Yep.
The UAE at the time had been trying to ease tensions and improve relations with Tehran, efforts that appear to have had little impact when on February 28th, Iran started raining missiles and drones down on the country in response to the joint U.S. Israeli offensive. Netanyahu was then invited, along with President Isaac Herzog, to attend the COP28 climate summit in Dubai in November of 2023. He did not end up going, however, due to the outbreak of war in Gaza a month prior following the deadly October 7th, 2023 Hamas massacre. Following the signing of the Abraham Accords in August 2020, unconfirmed reports allege that Netanyahu had secretly visited the Gulf state in 2018, although the prime minister's office declined to comment on the matter at that time. Although Jerusalem and Abu Dhabi have been working to increase security and economic cooperation in the years since the Abraham Accords, these efforts have strengthened dramatically since the outbreak of the war in Iran. Earlier on Wednesday, the Wall Street Journal reported that Mossad director David Barnea had made at least 2 trips to the Gulf state during the war to coordinate military actions. Separately, David Zini, the head of Shin Bet Domestic Security Agency, was reported by the Khan public broadcaster to have visited the UAE for the purpose of increasing coordination between the two countries' respective intelligence and security agencies. And earlier this week, senior U.S. officials confirmed previous reports that Israel has also sent an Iron Dome battery to the UAE along with soldiers to operate it. So, Tehran has really pummeled the UAE. Um, Now, here is the other thing that has been unleashed. And I'm not going to pay any money to read the New York Times. So I don't know what the original article was, but this is an opinion piece by Jonathan S. Tobin from the Jewish News Syndicate. Rapist dogs? Question mark. Woke journalism's anti-Semitic war on Israel crosses a line. The New York Times publication of absurd blood libels and conspiracies requires more than polite protests. Those who defend it or won't shame and shun it are also to blame. So here we go with the New York Times and their piece. And I'll get to it in a moment, but Israel has announced a defamation suit against the New York Times because of it. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the pro Israel community has been complaining about the New York Times since the 1970s. Indeed, anger about the attitude of the so called newspaper of record towards Jews can be traced back to long before that. And I have heard Mark Levin do that.
Mm-hmm.
Above all, the way it silenced coverage of the Holocaust because its assimilated Jewish owners didn't wish to shine a spotlight on the specifically anti-Jewish crimes committed by the German Nazis and their collaborators remains among the darkest chapters in the publication's history. How has it gone on? How has the New York Times maintained the problems with the Times reporting about the state of Israel and the war being waged against it, or even its efforts to whitewash the Jewish hatred of some of its foes, like Iran, in past decades, are well documented. But now these issues fade almost into insignificance when compared to its current endeavors. Simply put, the newspaper, which remains among the most important in the world due to its reputation, vast readership, and enormous journalistic resources that dwarf most of the dwarf those of most of its significant competitors, has now crossed the line between biased coverage and outright anti-Semitic incitement. Lots of words to read here. The publication of columnist Nicholas Kristof's article, The Silence That Meets the Rape of Palestinians, wasn't merely a disgraceful example of bad reporting. Almost as soon as it was published on May 11th, it was debunked by numerous media monitoring organizations and commentators as relying almost completely on sources associated with Hamas terrorists and containing little or no evidence that stands up to scrutiny. So this guy's name is Nicholas Kristof. And his article is titled The Silence That Meets the Rape of Palestinians. Israelis have been subjected to false accusations before and no doubt will continue to be singled out for biased coverage. And that includes the work of some left wing Jewish and Israeli publications that will put out just about any unfounded claim to bolster the anti Zionist cause or merely because they hope it will discredit the current government, which they oppose. Now, there's probably the main thing. You've got a group of left wing Jews involved in some of this that hate Netanyahu so much that they will do this thing to try to discredit the government
Oh, sure.
just so they can get their um, people in.
An international smear campaign.
Yep. But by lending credence to to the ridiculous and undocumented accusation that Israelis trained dogs to rape Palestinian Arab prisoners, they published something that is not merely unproven, even by the evidence which Christoph subsequently claimed existed, but which most experts about dogs believe to be impossible. By running that along with other horrible stories about sexual violence for which he provided no credible proof, Christoph left the realm of merely disputed or dubious claims and crossed over into the realm of open Jew hatred. This isn't merely a controversial accusation that can be debated. It is a blood libel, pure and simple. Indeed, it is not going too far to say that the Times' decision to publish, promote, and defend the piece warrants comparison to the same sort of vicious Nazi propaganda published in Die Stürmer by the regime led by Adolf Hitler. That the article was published on the eve of the release of a well documented and detailed report about the atrocious sexual violence committed by Palestinian Arabs led by Hamas on October 7th makes the paper's decision even more outrageous. The Times knew about the report. It was approached by its authors and offered its findings months in advance, but they were rebuffed. Instead, the paper went ahead and ran Christoph's dubious compendium of Hamas accusations first so as to try to overshadow the truthful story about the actual crimes committed by Palestinians against their Israeli victims. And we know that that's what they do. They do that in all of their stuff. They rape while they do their violent acts.
Sure.
That makes it clear that Christoph's piece is a classic case of mirroring in which criminal regimes and movements attempt to falsely claim that their opponents are committing the very crimes of which they themselves are guilty. So who is this Christoph guy? I want to know
Mm-hmm.
and who's paid him,
Soros.
you know? And so it says the rape accusations lodged against Israel are similar to the ones about genocide that are ubiquitous in the Times and uttered throughout the liberal media, as well as left wing academics and politicians, as if they are documented truth. Hamas is a genocidal movement whose purpose is the destruction of Israel and the mass murder of its population. The attacks that occurred on October 7th, 2023, were not merely an actual attempt at genocide. They were a trailer for what the Palestinian Arabs, and by that I mean Hamas and other Islamic groups, as well as its supposedly more moderate rivals, wish to do to the rest of Israel if given the opportunity. Yet Christoph is standing by his story, and his publishers are brandishing his reputation and Pulitzer Prizes as an all purpose answer to their critics. Well, I think the Pulitzer Prize and all of that stuff is bunk now.
Oh, it has been for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who cares? That Christoph has been guilty of journalistic malpractice in the past and used his important perch to defend con men is a matter of record. That the Pulitzers are something of a joke has long been known to the journalists. Reaffirmed this year with the awarding of one to the Times photographer for a picture that accompanied an article about the alleged starvation of Palestinians, but the picture that won the award turned out to be a child suffering from cerebral palsy, not a starvation victim, thus making it yet another example of journalistic fraud. Sadly, the Pulitzers and the Times are no more willing to rescind or to return this prize than they are of another one rooted in fraud in the paper that the paper won in 1932 by Times writer Walter Duranty for lying articles that denied the truth of Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin's mass murder of Ukrainians in the terror famine. Still, the paper's self serving claims of accuracy will probably be more than enough for the now overwhelming liberal audience that reads the Times these days. That the publishers and editors of the newspaper would go along with Christoph's decision to head down this particularly vile rabbit hole of hate says something important about the sea change in the liberal corporate media. The same applies to the credentialed elites to whom the paper largely appeals. If the comments posted to the article on the Times website mean anything, they are more than ready to believe a story as fantastic as one about rape and dogs, as long as the accusations are lodged against Israel, and to cheer Christoph for his courage in spreading such obvious Hamas propaganda. Readers, by this point, accustomed to not merely to the newspaper's regurgitation of obviously exaggerated and or false civilian casualty statistics provided by Hamas, those who only get their news from this newspaper or many other liberal mainstream media outlets that have similar attitudes toward Israel may think themselves among the best informed people in the world. But in fact, such persons are painfully ignorant about the war that Hamas and other Iranian proxies are raging against the Jewish state, since they have been given little or no information about how Israel's enemies operate in Gaza or Lebanon. More to the point, they have already been conditioned to think of everything Israel does as a nefarious conspiracy. But take one of the many examples of this pattern of coverage, you need only to look at the feature published by the Times the same day as it ran Christoph's blood libel about efforts to build support for Israel's entry into the Eurovision Song Contest and to prevent the country from being expelled from the competition. The article depicted Israel's efforts to avoid being thrown out of the popular international television program as if it were a secretive intelligence operation that subverted the contest. It may be hard to take something as silly and cheesy as Eurovision seriously, but the same global movement that has it as its mission the destruction of of the one Jewish state on the planet is angry about the success Israelis have enjoyed in the contest. Countries where anti-Semitism is endemic, like Ireland, believe it or not, have tried to throw the Israelis out. They don't think those who watch it should be exposed to the spectacle of Israelis singing and dancing and performing songs the same as other contestants. And the Times hinted at dark forces somehow manipulating the public voting that plays a part in determining the victors. But like any such competition in which people can vote 10 times, the voting to determine who gets to play in Major League Baseball's All Star game allows fans to vote 5 times a day for weeks. To even raise the question of voter fraud is absurd. But when Jews and Israelis are involved, anything is possible. How is it conceivable that the Times and similar media outlets have gotten to the point where they are ready to suspend normal standards of journalistic credibility if it allows them to besmirch Israel, even the crazy charges like the one about training animals to commit rape? The answer is obvious and familiar. A generation of journalists who were indoctrinated in the toxic leftist myths of critical race theory, intersectionality, and settler colonialism takes it as a given that the world is divided into two immutable classes of persons. On the one side are people of color who are always victims no matter what they do. On the other side are white oppressors who are always in the wrong, regardless of the evidence about their actions or those who seek their destruction. The neo Marxist intersectional mindset labels Israelis and Jews as the latter. That's despite the fact that they form the most persecuted minority group in history and that the majority of Israelis are not white. But a press mark but a press that doesn't think evidence or facts matter as much as their assumptions rooted in their radicalist politics doesn't care about that. That's the only reason why anti Zionist screeds are regularly published in the Times in recent years, even though such stands deny rights to Jews and apply double standards and smears to Israel that are the working definition of anti Semitism. Christoph began his career in an era where this was not the case. But to maintain his relevance and popularity in the newsroom, where woke doctrine is the new orthodoxy, he has adapted his already loose standards to accommodate the current intellectual fashion. And that's what's happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I talk about what's happened at the beginning of the program about Joni,
Right. It's
this
all
is
propaganda.
it's like he's adapted his already loose standards to accommodate the current intellectual fashion.
Right. What's the difference? Propaganda.
Yep. The result is the demonization of Israelis, even if it means resorting to the sort of lunacy that would assert that Israeli dogs rape human beings on the word of propaganda outfits like the Euromed Human Rights Monitor. To deem Christoph and the Times guilty of blood libel doesn't mean that Israelis commit no crimes or that the Jewish state is perfect. It is no more perfect than any other nation, though compared to the rest of the region, its imperfect democracy stands out as an exception to the authoritarian and lawless standards of the Middle East. Still, it needs to be reiterated that there is no evidence that there is anything like the systematic criminal abuse of Palestinian prisoners, some of whom are guilty of taking part in the crimes of October 7th. And Christoph gives us none of that any editor or publisher with a shred of integrity would accept as enough to justify running his story. What then is the proper response to the Times? Suffice to say that we are past the point where polite, factual letters to the editor or even the most scathing report by media monitoring organizations can serve as sufficient response. I have a little bit of a problem here. I guess a hair trying to get into my mouth. Pardon me. There needs to be a concerted effort to hold the newspaper accountable. But we already know that that won't work. Boycotts by pro Israel and Jewish readers will be of little use because few who care if the Jewish state survives still pay for subscriptions to it. Demonstrations outside its offices on Manhattan's 42nd Street are a good idea, but one off events aren't enough. The paper needs to be given the same treatment that some of its readers think should be accorded to Israel. No one in public life, be they Jewish or not, should treat their employees as if they are credible journalists or ask their queries. The Times reporters should no more be entitled to credentials to cover government or any other sector of public life than would those who work for rags produced by hate groups and also traffic in blood libels against Jews or anyone else. The paper deserves to be shamed and shunned, at least until the unlikely event of its retracting Christoph's article. And anyone who doesn't, whether out of concern for the freedom of the press that the newspaper mocks or because they think it's appropriate to publish such absurd and unproven lies, is just as guilty as Christoph and his editors and publishers. There should be no reticence about making it clear that it is helping to incite the growing toll of anti Semitic violence against Jews in this country and around the world. Perhaps the New York Times is too big to fail or to be isolated. Perhaps the liberal popular culture that still exalts it as a credible source is still so pervasive that its current position as a never-ending source of bile hurled at President Donald Trump and Israel makes it untouchable. But that should not discourage those who understand that Christoph's article is a crossing of the Rubicon when it comes to the paper's credibility. No decent person should accept the newspaper as a legitimate source so long as it's willing to traffic in blood libels against Jews. And we should be confident that, as with the past crimes against journalism, such as those committed in the 30s and 40s, the verdict of history will judge all those associated with the newspaper and those who support it as knowingly guilty of spreading falsehoods, misinformation, and anti Semitism. Well, you would hope but I mean, it did things abhorrent during the Holocaust and didn't suffer for it. It's gone on since.
Right.
And two, another thing about this is it's in Mamdani's New York now.
Right.
So they have elected uh, a Muslim head of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of got stands that, blood libels against Jews would be the things that would follow, right? I mean, the same mindset is there.
Yeah. Pretty
Those
bad.
who those who voted him in.
Yeah. It's pretty bad when the nicest thing about him is he's a communist.
Yeah, he's a communist. Yeah. But again, I said the Israeli government has announced it's preparing to sue the far left New York Times for defamation following the publication by Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times of one of the most hideous and distorted lies ever published against the state of Israel in modern press, which also received the backing of the newspaper, wrote the Israeli foreign minister on X. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Gideon Saar have instructed the initiation of a defamation lawsuit against the New York Times. And then Prime Minister Netanyahu later released on his own statement on X, "Today I instructed my legal advisors to consider the harshest legal action against the New York Times and Nicholas Kristof. They defamed the soldiers of Israel and perpetuated a blood libel about rape, trying to create a false symmetry between the genocidal terrorists of Hamas and Israel's valiant soldiers. Under my leadership, Israel will not be silent. We will fight these lies in the court of public opinion and in the court of law. Truth will prevail." And so, and then it goes on to talk about the article, but that's good. I'm glad.
Mhm.
I'm glad they're taking action there against that. Um, let's see. I had a couple things. What would I have time to do? I think I could. I think I can save this for later. Could the blueprint for the rapture be revealed in the flood of Noah? I think we'll talk. I mean, we'll talk about that because I've been going through Mark Biltz's book, and I thought there was something very interesting. If I have time, and I think it's only 10 pages. Well, maybe not even 10. Maybe it's 8 pages. Chapter 8's 8 pages. I have to explain something about this. This is in the beginning here in his introduction. Um, he has said here the writings of the prophet Jeremiah have to be one of the most fascinating prophetic puzzles recorded in the Bible. And he said, within the book of Jeremiah, the chapters are mixed up chronologically as if the book were cut into pieces and thrown into the air and pieced back together, however they landed. And he goes, to me, this is representative of the chaotic times that Jeremiah lived in as he continuously warned the nation of Israel about the coming destruction of Jerusalem and the temple and the exile of God's people into Babylon. And this was due to their disobedience and their wanton disregard of the pleading of God of their fathers to return to him. Jeremiah is well known as the weeping prophet, and I believe that this title is very appropriate because as an ambassador for God, Jeremiah was properly representing the grief and the heartbreak over the coming judgment. So what's interesting here is he says that the book was cut into pieces and thrown into the air. And so what he has done in this book, if I can find it quickly here, he says, in our adventure of decoding the prophet Jeremiah, you'll discover many crazy anomalies. For instance, the first verse of the book of Jeremiah 25 took place in the 4th year of Jehoiakim. But the first verse of Jeremiah 45 also occurred in the 4th year of Jehoiakim. And yet, in between these chapters, in the first verse of chapter 28, it was the 4th year of Zedekiah, which was 11 years later. This makes it obvious the chapters are not in order but patched together, right? So he says that he said, I've written this book as a guide to help you read the book of Jeremiah so the book will make much more sense. And he goes, I've arranged the chapters during the reigns of various kings, but I realized they could be arranged differently. I did it this way because this is the chapter order in which I would recommend reading the book of Jeremiah. I also suggest that these chapters probably took place during the reign of each king, and I believe this is a much more historically accurate order of the different chapters of Jeremiah and the order that they should be read. So, by reading Jeremiah in this chapter order, you will have a better sense of what's going on. And so he's arranged things and he's arranged the book of Jeremiah in order of the kings. And so when we come to chapter 8, he's talking about chapter Jeremiah 22, chapter 45, and chapter 36. So he's trying to bring these things together to make sense because Jeremiah is evidently just all out of
It is. It's a hodgepodge.
of 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 order. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So he says here in the last chapter, which covered Jeremiah 25, we learned that in the 4th year of Jehoiakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar began his reign. But in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem and took captives, including Daniel and the other Hebrew children, as we find in Daniel 1:1. The next 3 chapters we will cover in the book of Jeremiah, chapters 22, 45, and 36, all happened in Jehoiakim's 4th year. Okay? So you can see how out of sequence that book is. Chaos not only happens in his fourth year, but also the fourth year of Zedekiah. And there was something about Zedekiah's fourth year that I found to be just as explosive. But first, let's decode Jehoiakim's fourth year. And he goes, "This time the Lord told Jeremiah to take a field trip to the house of the king of Judah and speak a word there. The Lord informed Jeremiah that if he and the nation exercised proper judgment, lived righteously, delivered the oppressed, and avoided wrongdoing, violence to the fatherless and the widows, and shedding innocent blood, then the kings would sit on the throne of David and all would be great. But if they didn't, God promised to turn them into a heap of ruin. And when the nations asked why, they would be told because Israel forsook God and worshiped other gods." That's pretty much the whole story, isn't it?
Yep.
Then the Lord made it a little more personal by mentioning Josiah's other son, Jehoiahaz, called Shallum here, and recounting the way he was hauled off to Egypt to die. Jehoiakim then heard what his father Josiah did to get to know God. His father pursued judgment and justice, and he judged the cause of the poor and the needy, and that is how he got to know God. But Jehoiakim's desire was only covetousness, shedding innocent blood, oppressing others, and being violent. It was all about him. Knowing God is more than an intellectual understanding. It is putting Torah into action. Jeremiah informed us that knowing God involves exercising loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth because that is what pleases God. If I were Jeremiah standing in front of the king, I'm not sure I would have continued because the Lord was about to really bring it home regarding what he thought of Jehoiakim. Would you? Jeremiah opened his mouth and uttered these words. "Therefore, thus says the Lord concerning Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, they shall not lament for him, saying, Ah, my brother, or Ah, sister. They shall not lament for him, saying, Ah, Lord, or Ah, his glory. He shall be buried with the burial of an ass, drawn and cast forth beyond the gates of Jerusalem."
Hmm.
And that's from Jeremiah 22, 18 and 19. Then came a curse that his son Jechaniah, who was called Coniah for short, would be given into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar and cast out with his mother into another country. Now, you understand why I said that if I were Jeremiah, I would have turned and run for sure. The Lord instructed them to record this man as if he were childless, because he would not prosper and none of his seed would rule on the throne of David. While none of his seed ever ruled on the throne, he did have a son who played a part in Israel's future. 3 generations later, the returnees from Babylon were headed by a man named Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, the son of Jechoniah. On the 21st day of the 7th month, the Lord told the prophet Haggai to tell Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, that the new house they were building would be filled with the glory of God. It just so happened that the 21st day of the 7th month was the last day of Sukkot, the same day when Yeshua would later stand up and cry out that all who were thirsty should come to him. But getting back to Jeremiah, I'm telling you, this is one of the most incredible years of biblical history. In Jeremiah chapter 36, we see that it is the fourth year of Jehoiakim, and that the Lord told Jeremiah to write on a scroll all the words he had spoken against Israel, against Judah, and against all the nations from the days of Josiah up to that point. That was 23 years of messages up to that point. I guess the Lord wanted to make sure that they had a record of what they heard so that they would never forget. Because Jeremiah did what the Lord said, you are now blessed and able to read these very historic messages. It's a permanent picture of God's heart as he declared that the sole purpose of the warning was in hope that the house of Judah would hear it and repent so God could forgive their iniquity and sin. Jeremiah called Baruch, the son of Neriah, and Baruch had the fun task of writing from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of the Lord from the last 23 years. I never heard this talked about Baruch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jeremiah was being detained and couldn't go into the house of the Lord, so Baruch entered the house of the Lord and read the word of the Lord from the mouth of Jeremiah that was written in the scroll. He was to read it on fast days when the people were coming from their cities to the temple, so that they were praying and presenting their supplications. Maybe everyone would repent and God wouldn't have to bring the impending disaster. I'm sure Baruch was thinking, "Woe is me," but he did it. He probably felt he would die at their hands. So a time was coming to Israel, just like what we witnessed in America after 9/11, when everyone ran to God after a disaster. Nebuchadnezzar had taken captives, and it was time to run to the temple with fasting and prayer. I need to bring in the prophet Joel now. Nebuchadnezzar was characterized as a lion coming to destroy Jerusalem. Well, Joel also described him this way when he spoke the word of the Lord. For a nation is come up upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he has the cheek teeth of a great lion. Joel 1:6. Joel was telling the people to seek God. He even told them to sanctify a fast and to call a solemn assembly, gathering the elders and all the inhabitants of the house of God to cry out. For the day of the Lord was at hand, and a destruction of the Almighty it would come. Then he told them to blow a trumpet in Zion and sound the alarm, for the Lord was coming. God then told the people to turn to him with all their hearts, with fasting and with weeping and with mourning, rending their hearts and not their garments. For he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness. This was a pivotal moment in history. Joel was working in tandem with Jeremiah and the Lord concerning this fasting day, which was also when Baruch was to read from the scroll. Joel told the priests that they needed to be weeping between the porch and the altar and crying out to God to spare his people. If you read Jeremiah 45, you discover that this was going on just before Baruch was coming in to speak. When Baruch had written these words from the mouth of Jeremiah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, listening to what the Lord said to Baruch through Jeremiah, you said, "Woe is me now." Can you believe it? Then he told Baruch not even to think about seeking great things for himself. He told Baruch this place was history, but he would survive. So when God orders people to fast, something has to be going on or coming down. So, exactly when did this day of fasting take place? At this time, the only day of fasting on the biblical calendar was Yom Kippur. So, up to this point in history, the only fast was Yom Kippur. The other 4 fasting days that have been observed for the past 2,500 years all have had to do with the destruction of the temple. So, up to this point, the temple hadn't been destroyed. The only fast day was Yom Kippur, which hadn't happened yet at the time of Baruch. This is why I previously pointed out that some of Daniel's story and the story of the 3 Hebrew children being thrown into the fiery furnace in Babylon happened before the temple was destroyed. Now keep that in mind. They were thrown in the furnace in the 5th year of Jehoiakim, which was almost 18 years before Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple. Okay? So in the 5th year of Jehoiakim, in the 9th month, a fast was proclaimed before the Lord. The 9th month, known as the month of Kislev, occurs in the winter, usually equivalent to our December. It is the month of Hanukkah. That same day, Baruch was in the house of the Lord reading the words of the Lord from the mouth of Jeremiah. One of the listeners told all the princes what he had heard, and they requested that Baruch come and read it to them. After hearing the word, they were terrified and decided to tell the king. They asked Baruch how he got this information, and he told them it came directly from Jeremiah's mouth, and he wrote it down. The princes told him he'd better quickly hide and not tell anyone where. When the princes told the king what they had heard, he sent a man by the name of Yehudi to fetch the scroll and read it to him. Get ready because all the pieces are about to come together. As we've learned, Jehoiakim was a bar mitzvah boy. He heard the word of the Lord read to his father, King Josiah, who then tore his garments in fear and repentance. Would Jehoiakim respond in kind? King Jehoiakim was in his winter house, and there was a fire on the hearth burning before him. When Yehudi had read 3 or 4 columns, he cut it with a knife and cast it into the fire until the roll was consumed. He was not afraid, nor did he tear his garments, and neither did any of his servants that heard the words. You have to remember it was the 5th year of Jehoiakim, which was the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar. That was the word of the Lord, that the word of the Lord was thrown into the fire. It just so happens that the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign was when Nebuchadnezzar had his troublesome dream, and Daniel interpreted it for him. Nebuchadnezzar built his image of gold, and because the three Hebrew boys refused to worship it, they were thrown into the fiery furnace. King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished when he saw not only three men who were cast into the fire walking around, but a fourth man walking around with them. Okay?
Mhm.
This was just too much. The word of the Lord was thrown into the fire in Jerusalem by Jehoiakim, right?
Mhm.
And now the word of the Lord, Yeshua Messiah, appeared in the fire of Babylon. In Jerusalem, 3 or 4 columns of the word of the Lord were thrown into the fire. And in Babylon, 3 or 4 people appeared in the fiery furnace at the same time. Good thing people were fasting and praying. Interesting enough, different translations describe what was thrown into the fire in Jerusalem as either leaves or columns of the scroll. The Hebrew word is delet, Delet, is how it's phonetically spelled, delet, which actually means door. There is an interesting parallel between people and doors. In 2 different verses, people are compared to doors. We also know Yeshua is likened to a door, and the word of the Lord is compared to a fire. So I find all of the symbolism fascinating. The king demanded that Jeremiah and Baruch be seized, but they were hidden away. And the Lord instructed Jeremiah to have another copy made. God made an addendum to the words of the last scroll, informing Jehoiakim that none of his descendants would sit on the throne of David, and his dead body would be cast into the open. And not only would he be punished, but so would his family and his servants and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They would experience all the doom of God had pronounced against them because they had not heeded the warnings. Let's summarize thoughts. God's servants have to be bold when proclaiming the word of the Lord, but they better be sure it is his word and not their own feelings or thoughts. We must be careful not to add or subtract from God's word. I find it amazing that the same year that has that as 3 or 4 columns of the word of the Lord are thrown into the fire in Jerusalem, we find that 3, no, 4 people were found in the fiery furnace of Babylon, especially since we see in the opening verses of the Gospel of John that Yeshua is compared to being the Word. Here we have the word of the Lord appearing in the fiery furnace in Babylon, the same year the word of the Lord was thrown in the fire in Jerusalem. This is why having a timeline and connecting the different books during the same timeline is so important. And I'd never heard of that.
Mm.
So interesting.
He's always got a new take, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, when you match it up, the same time Jehoiakim was throwing his 3 or 4 columns in the fire, the 3 Hebrew children were in the fire with the fourth man. So fascinating. I just thought that was neat. I hope you enjoyed that because I enjoyed finding that out. And I was like, I'd never heard anybody talk about that before.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, and now I am down to my, like I said, I'm going to save that for later. Archaeological story of the evening. Ancient tunnel with an unknown age, purpose found near Kibbutz Ramat Rachel, ahead of Jerusalem Day. Like I said, Jerusalem Day, although this is my Israel shirt that says Israel was established in 1273 BCE. So, but Jerusalem, after the war in 1967, the Six Day War, Jerusalem was reunited. So that's what they're celebrating with Jerusalem Day. But here we go. A mysterious and ancient stone tunnel was recently discovered near Kibbutz Ramat Rachel in southern Israel, Jerusalem. During preventative excavations ahead of the construction of the new neighborhood promoted by the Israel Land Authority. The find, announced by the Israel Antiquities Authority on Thursday morning, is expected to measure approximately 50 meters long, 5 meters high, and 3 meters wide. We were excavating in relatively rocky and exposed terrain when suddenly we discovered a natural karstic cavity, said Dr. Savan Mazrahi and Zinovi Mashevich. the excavation directors on behalf of the IAA. To our amazement, as the excavation progressed, this cavity developed into a long tunnel. Parts of it are still collapsed, so the tunnel has not yet revealed all of its secrets. After descending a set of ancient stairs from the surface, archaeologists found themselves standing at the hewn opening of the tunnel, which was filled with sewage that had apparently flowed into it over hundreds of thousands of years. Yuck. That's one of the things I don't like about archaeology. You have to climb down into the sewers.
Yeah.
The quarry was executed meticulously. It is clear that whoever carved this tunnel invested tremendous effort, careful planning, and possessed the capabilities and resources necessary to achieve this goal. And yes, it is I don't you can't see it there, but it is a very nice, neat tunnel. The age of the tunnel is also a mystery to researchers. The excavation directors explained since not even the smallest find uncovered that could indicate when it was created. Even so, the two noted that the tunnel is only a few hundred meters from two other important historical sites: an Iron Age First Temple period public building in Jerusalem, our Nona neighborhood, and Tel Ramat Rachel, which is home to settlement remains from both the Iron Age and the Islamic period. Yet the purpose of the tunnel remains unclear. Initially, researchers proposed that the tunnel was an ancient water installation built to reach a nearby spring. This assumption, however, was ruled out for several reasons: the lack of plastering on the tunnel walls, a common practice for water infrastructure in order to prevent seepage, following a consultation with a geologist who explained that there are no known underground water sources in the surrounding area, and because the tunnel bears no indication of water accumulation. The second possibility floated by researchers was that the tunnel belonged to an underground agricultural or industrial installation. However, upon further examination, the scale of work and the absence of comparable sites in the vicinity made this explanation unlikely. Currently, the assessment is that the tunnel was dug to reach a chalk layer suitable for quarrying building stone or for lime production. A possible ventilation shaft carved into the tunnel ceiling, as well as quarry debris discovered on the tunnel's floor, support this theory, although it too remains uncertain. Alternatively, the tunnel may never have been completed, leaving its intended purpose and nature unknown. Dr. Amit Raem, a Jerusalem district archaeologist at the IAA, added that the discovery on the eve of Jerusalem Day joins many others being uncovered every day, hour by hour, throughout the city. Usually we have explanations for the discoveries we uncover, but sometimes, in this case, we stand astonished and amazed. Re'em said Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu echoed the sentiment, noting that during Jerusalem Day week, this special discovery reminds us of the deep and ancient connection of the Jewish people to Jerusalem. Beneath the city's soil, extraordinary enterprises of life, creativity, and construction are revealed time and again, testifying to generations of people who lived and worked here and left their mark, he said. Jerusalem is not only the present day capital of the state of Israel, it is also the heart of the historical story of the Jewish people, which continues to be uncovered before our eyes. The tunnel is expected to be incorporated into a public archaeological park built near the new neighborhood being planned by the Israel Lands Authority. The neighborhood, to be built north of the kibbutz on approximately 58 dunams, is expected to include 488 housing units, thousands of square meters designated for employment and commercial use, an elementary school, and kindergartens. I personally don't understand how they can build anything in Jerusalem because of all these cavities underneath. I don't know how anything gets supported. So, but interesting find. So,
Awesome.
anyway, well, I have come down to the end of everything tonight. So I hope that you have enjoyed the broadcast this evening and the information that I brought. My voice is held out. I'm surprised, but anyway, but it has. So I'm on the mend, and hopefully I will get even better as the next days go along. So pray for me. I got to mow the yard tomorrow. But tomorrow evening, of course, is Adat Ariel here at, we'll have our Shabbat service. And then, as I had said at the beginning of the program, next week we'll be observing Shavuot and teachings surrounding that. So, if you want to keep this program coming your way, Jim will tell you how.
If you'd like to make a donation, you can send it to Truth in Life Today, 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois, 62959. That's Truth in Life Today. 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois, 62959. And in your envelope, stick a little note in there. Tell us how you'd like your donation to be used.
That's true. So pray for everyone that you can. Whoever God brings to your mind. I mentioned at the beginning of the program, pray for Richard and his wife still dealing with health issues. And pray for all of us and the attacks that have been coming against us. We'll pray for you as well. Pray for our president as he is still in China, and I guess will be till tomorrow. And safe travels and wisdom and all of those sorts of things um, for us and for the benefit of this country. We're in the 250th year. So pray that not only for the peace of Jerusalem, but for a revival in the United States of America. So
Amen.
until we meet again, um, same time, same place. Shalom, everyone.